With me now, retired Navy commander and former Pentagon spokesperson, J.D. Gordon. J.D., good to see you.
Hey, Liz, great to see you.
All right, J.D., before we even get into the minute-by-minute, play-by-play of what happened in Niger, the argument that's coming from the left right now, they're trying to brand Niger as President Trump's Benghazi. To me, that has a faulty premise because they have literally spent the past 5 years saying nothing wrong happened in Benghazi, that it was a tragedy, but Hillary Clinton, the State Department, President Obama, nobody was responsible for any negligence or wrongdoing. So how can Niger then, if they're saying that something wrong happened there, be Benghazi if they don't think anything wrong happened there?
Yeah, it's really crazy, Liz. This is TDS at its maximum, Trump derangement syndrome. The left is so apoplectic about President Trump, they'll say anything or do anything to try to make him look bad. However, they make themselves look really bad when they come up with these faulty analogies. There was nothing in common whatsoever with Benghazi and what happened in Niger. The only thing that's the same is 4 Americans died on duty in Africa. That's it. That's the only thing. They were fighting radical Islamic terror groups too, but the situations were completely different. We had our military soldiers, our soldiers in Niger out on a mission, a reconnaissance mission to find a terror leader, but they got ambushed. But it was a totally different scenario than Benghazi, where we had a U.S. mission there that was attacked when we had experienced 200 attacks. We collectively had experienced 200 attacks in Libya from al-Qaeda since Gaddafi died. So these are apples and oranges, night and day. The left's just going crazy about President Trump. That's all it is.
Right. They're the ones that are politicizing this tragedy. They hacked President Trump for his phone call, which we don't know the context, and it seems like a miscommunication, yet they ignored what really happened in Benghazi here. I mean, in Benghazi, Ambassador Stevens and his staff sent security requests to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton over 600 times. She ignored them. She didn't listen to them. They knew that was going to happen. The threats by radical Islamists in Benghazi were looming, and they knew it, yet the State Department didn't care. This was not a situation anything similar to what happened in Niger. They were out looking for a terror leader. It wasn't something that they were ill-equipped to handle, to defend themselves at their station. It is absolutely ridiculous. The other part of this, JD, and this is disingenuous from some members of Congress, in my opinion, they're claiming that they didn't know that there were troops in Niger. They were unaware of what was going on. But if you look at the facts here, if you look at history, if you look at AFRICOM, they actually tweeted about U.S. troops being in Niger. And tweets are about as public as you can possibly get here, not to mention the classified briefings that they provided or offered members of the Senate, which our senators blew off.
Yeah, exactly right, Liz. I mean, our military leaders actually briefed the Senate that we had troops in Niger. We've got about 6,000 troops throughout Africa. They engage in these dangerous type of missions. We have troops all around the world engaging in training, advice, and assistance to militaries to help fight against these radical Islamic terror groups. I remember just a few months after 9/11, Liz, I found myself in the jungles of the southern Philippines as the spokesman for Special Operations Command Pacific, and we had about 600 Special Forces soldiers, Army soldiers, training and advising the Philippine military to combat the Abu Sayyaf group, which is another terror group. We had a platoon of SEALs doing the same thing. We had media come visit us. It was well known what we were doing in the Philippines. But we have exercises and training all around the world.
Right, right, and it's not a secret. I mean, anybody who has a Twitter account could have seen for themselves. There's literally pictures and tweets about them being in Niger. All right, JD, let's go through a little bit of this timeline because I think this is another area that the media isn't reporting quite accurately. We don't know all the details yet, but these are the details we do know. So this coalition of U.S. forces, special forces, they were Green Berets, which means they were engaging in unconventional warfare. That's why they weren't in armored vehicles. They were hunting down a terror leader, as you said. They were ambushed by about 50 radical Islamists. 4 times, more than 4 times as many as were in their group. They engaged with these terrorists for about an hour before they ever called in air support. That's issue number 1. Now, the left is saying, oh, President Trump did the same thing that Hillary Clinton did and didn't send in air support. Is that accurate?
That's insane. That's entirely insane. The left just digs themselves into a hole when they say these things, because in a firefight in Niger, who knows who the soldiers are talking to. Hopefully they were talking to somebody at Africa Command, but it's entirely different than the situation in Benghazi, where we had ample warning there was going to be an attack in Benghazi, and our ambassador had requested more security. Al-Qaeda had 200 attacks in Libya since Gaddafi died. This is so apples and oranges that the left makes himself look ridiculous. It's almost like saying there's aliens in Roswell and we know it and we're just going to stick with that until people believe us. So the left really doesn't do himself any favors when they make up these allegations that have no bearing in fact whatsoever.
Right, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dunford, he said that the U.S. Army soldiers may have thought that they could handle it themselves. That may have been why they waited an hour before they called in air support. After an hour, French jets brought that air support. And the other question is, it took 48 hours before they found Sergeant Johnson's body. That's another sticking point. I mean, that is difficult to think about, leaving a man behind, especially when our military's mantra is no man left behind here. Why would it take them so long to find him, and why would they have left him behind?
You know, it's very difficult to say under those circumstances. We don't have a heavy military presence in Niger, of course. So it's difficult to precisely pinpoint it, but I'm sure that General Dunford and the staff at the Pentagon is going to do a good job. They're going to do an investigation, and we'll find out. But to say this is something like Benghazi is just insane. And then Frederica Wilson, the congresswoman in Florida, shame on her for trying to politicize all of this. I agree with President Trump. Perhaps she is a little wacky. I mean, she wears that cowboy hat. I don't know of many cowboys in Miami. Call me crazy. But just to politicize all of this with the poor widow, I mean, the widow's rights should be respected. All Gold Star families should be respected. So for Frederica Wilson to jump into this and politicize it, to me, is really shameful.
Right. I think General Kelly was right when he made that point that is there nothing sacred left in our country? Certainly the grief of a woman who lost her husband, who died fighting for our country, that should be sacred if nothing else.